You can gain hundreds of points on your elo rating by defending in these key positions. This uses some very important principles from which file the pawn is on to opposition, as well as to key squares that you need to use to defend appropriately. So it's white to move, and there's only one move that actually works here. Now, pause this right now before you kind of see the answer. I'm going to give you the solution right now. So in this position, white has a couple of options. Moving back here obviously doesn't work because king takes pawn and then you lose a pawn for no reason. So you've got king a2 and king c2. So what happens if you play king a2? Well, at first it looks okay. Well, what happens if black plays king c3? Well, you play king a3, king c2, king a2, and you think that you might be able to get away with it. So that's here, king c3, king a3, king c2, king a2, and maybe you can just go back and forth and this works. And when black plays king c3, king a3, and if black ever plays c4, you take, and you can never win with an a pawn or a h pawn, because white can just simply go back to a1 and just go back and forth. There's no possible win. So you might think that works. Well, actually, this doesn't work because white plays a4. And the reason why black plays a4 is that they know that this pawn is actually quite useless, because you can't win with just this pawn. So what black's trying to do is trade off the weak pawn and then use opposition to win. So after takes, what you've realized is that actually black just follows the king back to the board, and actually here white is in zugzwang. White can't move anywhere without black gaining one of these key squares. So if king d2, king b3, and then we know what happens. Black moves the pawn forward. So we just said that actually a4 is winning for black. So now we can't play king a2. So what's the other option? Well, king c2. But hold on, doesn't this result in the same problem? What happens if a4? But the big difference here is after takes, you can play king c3, and after king b5, you have the opposition. And it's not even about opposition here. It's that simply black cannot get to these key squares. And remember, if black were to be able to get here, it's an immediate win. But what's the difference here? So you've got this position versus this position. And so white was here and then black king was there versus here. And now you can see that actually in this line, black gets to the key squares, while here, white manages to control. And so the actual defense here is king c2. But there is a really interesting point here, is that actually what happens if king a3? Well, after king c3, we kind of discussed earlier, well, what happens if king a2, king c2? Surely this is just a draw. But actually, black has one other roll of the dice. After king c2, you play king a1. And this is where you cannot make the mistake of king c3 and thinking that you can go after these pawns. Because after king c3, black has the cunning king b1. And king c4, king b2. You run out of defending squares for this pawn. And if you take, king takes, and this pawn now rolls forward. So what's the only defense after king a1? Is king c1. And you'll notice that in king and pawn endgames, it's all about opposition. You're constantly trying to just oppose the king because you know you're blocking the king from coming in many, many situations. So ultimately, the only defense here is king c2, gain the opposition, and don't allow this king to come into these key squares to ultimately win the game.